Hello, Steve.
Morning.
What's up?
So you guys gave me a little scare this morning. You were talking about the governor of Texas. I caught the tail end of it, so I just wanted a little clarification. My mother-in-law, she's here from Texas. She's working in Sacramento. Her job is going to be done here this month. And I'm just kind of wondering, is she going to be able to go home, or am I going to have to shelter this wonderful woman for an undetermined amount of time?
A lot of people listening can relate to the horror of sheltering your mother-in-law. So here, under the current order that Governor Abbott of Texas ordered yesterday, she's allowed to go home, but she will have to self-quarantine herself because she'll go home and they'll know she arrives at the airport. She will have to quarantine herself for 2 weeks when she gets home. The extent to that most of that is self-quarantining. It's not like they're going to station the Texas Rangers outside of her home, but that's today. And so she can go home. Don't let her talk you into she can't get on a plane. But she will have to self-quarantine. Dr. Reed from the Griffin Reed Eye Care Center is with us this morning. And you're when you see people like you appear in this day and age, you think a couple of things. Okay, they are concerned about the coronavirus and either catching or transmitting the virus. When it's somebody like you, we immediately recognize you're elderly and high risk.
Oh my God!
Well, you're actually right. I am 65.
Or you're 55?
65.
65. I was going to say only 55.
No, I'm 45.
I mean,
Rob.
you look
Thank you.
55.
The mask makes me look much younger, actually.
Or the other thing you think, okay, this person's a nut. Which one are you? Because you got a mask and you got the rubber gloves on.
I'm actually at very high risk because of some medical conditions that I have.
Which you want to share openly with about 1 million people at this time.
By the way, the lady that drew my blood on Friday said that I'm a much easier stick than you are.
Oh, she.
So, Dara, thank you very much. I told her I'd give her a shout out.
We call her Dara.
Dara?
Yeah,
Okay.
even though she hates that.
Well,
yeah. Oh, shit, by the way, blank
she
her.
said you called her Darren, actually.
I got. Oh, is it?
Right.
Wait, is it Dara's right and Dara's wrong, or vice versa?
I'm not sure.
And by the way, blank her. I've gotten so much better at getting my blood taken. But anywho,
Okay.
Well, maybe so much better is still not like normal, right?
So you are.
Redheads are hard to stick. You know that, don't you?
Oh, not in my experience.
Yeah, Brandon would have issues with that. So
with all due respect.
You are wearing a mask and gloves to protect yourself.
Yes, and I've had an upper respiratory infection. Naturally, I got one a couple days after we got back from Hawaii a week ago Wednesday, and it turned into a sinus infection.
Now that's it. What was
my wife makes me check my temperature 4 times a day just to make sure that I'm okay.
The old-fashioned way?
Yeah, traditional or old-fashioned.
Oh, good Lord.
What was being in Hawaii like? Because we've gotten anecdotal stories from people, some who said, "Oh my God, it was amazing. There's nobody here," and others said, "There's nothing to do."
It was fantastic. I wish I'd have stayed there. We got there on the 8th, so before the world fell apart.
Much different world on March 8th.
It was,
yeah.
and we had 3 or 4 great days, and then the world fell apart. And then very few people were coming in, but really we were in Kauai, and nothing was going on. I mean, we played golf every day. We had a great time.
You play golf with your wife?
Actually, she loves to play.
my
She's very good.
God.
Okay, they have courses for women.
Girlfriend hit a 200. Oh my God. Courses for women.
Or they have,
Oh my.
they have tee boxes for them. Whatever. I'm glad you had a good time.
Girlfriend hit a 223-yard fairway wood on a par 5 and put it on the green in 2.
Oh, I've played with women that are good at golf. It's just
They just don't like it.
right.
Gentlemen only.
I mean-
ladies forbidden.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what my son-in-law says all the time too.
So, but it is confirmed. Have you been tested for COVID?
No, I have not.
Are you not? Are you not showing the right symptoms? Or have
I'm
you,
not.
Okay.
I'm not. I don't really have the symptoms that are classic for it, and I'm 99.99% sure I don't have it.
And you don't have a fever
I
because your
don't
wife
have
is
a
checked.
fever.
So that's one of the first.
Well, if I had a
things.
fever, I would go get tested right away.
And by the way, thank you for coming in. You could have
know.
said
Wow,
you could have
right?
said, "Hey, Rob, it's not a good
Well,
time."
Yeah, you could have. You're
It's
so
not a good
sweet.
time for anybody, Rob.
Oh,
I mean, you know.
Well, we
it is.
appreciate you
Yeah.
being
I'm
here.
glad to come.
I don't know if you were able to hear because I know you're in the building already. When we ended our previous segment, we were actually talking about what you just mentioned, one of your favorite things in the world, golf.
Yes.
And I was thinking driving in here, not knowing that you were not feeling well, about whether or not you were going out and able to play golf if your usual courses were open. I don't know how relevant it is with you being sick, but you've assumed a point in your life before COVID where you were golfing most days.
Actually 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh wow.
And have you been able to play at all, or because this post illness?
Since we got back, my buddies have played twice, but I got sick the day they were going to go play, so I stayed home.
So where you play is still open, and are you aware of they made changes?
No, actually, it's not open.
Now it's not open.
It's
How are
not
they
open.
playing golf then?
They played before it closed.
Okay.
Yeah, they played before it
Are you aware of any places that are open?
The only place I get emails from all these places, Cherry Island apparently still open,
Okay.
but that's the only place I know of that is.
We got this email from Clinton.
Hi, Clinton.
Says, my dad is golfing every day in Carmichael. He said 1 person per cart. I stopped by yesterday after work. There were tons of old people, and they were all pretty close to each other. We've talked a lot about this phenomenon, Doc, as we've been trying to figure out the social distancing thing and our anecdotal experience going out in grocery stores and such. It seems like the last few days there has been a shift. There's been a lot more people that are social distancing. But boy, does it seem like there's a lot of at-risk people, 65 and older, that are out not just during their shopping times, but Home Depot and other stories we've heard. And that maybe there's this attitude of, are they invincible? Do they not care? Have they seen worse? I don't know what your experience with this is.
Well, I would say that if you're in a high-risk category like I am, you have secondary medical conditions, that you should be very cautious. And that's why the gloves and the mask are on right now. But, you know, if you don't have secondary medical conditions, 85+% of people that get this disease get through it with a mild case of the flu.
Even in this age group.
Even in this age group, that's correct. But it increases the 15% that are hospitalized, that end up having severe complications, tend to have secondary medical conditions, and their chances of dying from it are exponentially higher if they ignore that and they're in that category. So basically, when people are social distancing and doing what they're doing, they're really protecting people like me from being exposed. And so I'm really grateful to people that follow those guidelines, because if we can flatten that curve that everybody talks about, the chances of this infecting more people and causing more people significant morbidity and or mortality decreases significantly.
I thought about this a little bit, where I was like, I wonder if it's a case of with some of the older people we'll see, and we'll automatically be like, oh my God, why aren't they social distancing? What the hell's wrong with them? I started thinking this could be a case of when we see someone who's thin, we automatically think they're healthy, but they literally could be 2 days away from a heart attack, right?
Right.
So we look at what we see as old, and what the hell's wrong with you? They all could be totally healthy and not at risk with everything, like what you were just saying.
They could,
You know,
they could. But if I was 60,
like-
if I was 65, well, I am 65. But if I had no other pre-existing conditions, I would still practice social distancing. And if I did go play golf, I would play in a single cart and, you know, expose myself as little as possible to others.
So you'll go from here back home and stay home for the day?
Yes, I will.
Are you bored out of your mind?
I am bored out of my mind.
What? Back to something you were talking about. I saw a report earlier this morning that Governor Newsom is hopeful that because of California's early shelter-in-place orders, that California will have enough hospital beds to get through this. And this is what we're seeing in the horrible examples of Italy and now New York.
Right.
Is something that you're referring to is that my understanding is a lot of people who either are showing symptoms of or are presumed to have coronavirus, but because we are still not caught up with testing, are filling up hospital space for guys like you and other people that, in case we have forgotten, prior to coronavirus, get sick, need the hospital, need ventilators or care for other reasons, and that's what's causing a lot of the influx in deaths as a result of all of this. Do I have all that right by your understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What has been your perception of society's reaction to this? One of the reasons we want to have you on, we've had your calming voice. People love you. But we've also liked having on, we had my dad on. we had my college teacher. People that have lived a little bit longer have seen more.
Old guys.
Old guys.
Yeah.
and have the perspective of they weren't children like I was, say, and Dawn was during the 70s when we had gas lines. Remember, it was awful. We didn't really have perception. Before that, the 60s had parents who went through a hell of a lot more, right, and worse, whether it's World War II, Great Depression. What's your overall view of what you're seeing with society?
I think this is an unprecedented time in history of America where people have been asked to step up and perhaps look outside themselves, particularly the younger generations, to protect people who are older and at risk. And the problem is, and I don't know how you solve this problem, but I've heard the politicians talk about it. I think people like me who are at risk are going to have to socially isolate themselves for a significant amount of time until either a vaccine becomes available or it becomes proven that the treatment with Plaquenil and Z-Pak or azithromycin really works on a consistent basis so that your risk factors are less to go out and be exposed in public. I think that to ask people your age to continue to be quarantined over a long period of time will probably devastate the economy and perhaps devastate people's lives. Our office right now is closed. There are 3 physicians besides myself who work. One of them is on call, but then the other 2 come in and see post-ops 1 day a week now. And it's very difficult because we have 35 staff members, and most of them have been furloughed right now because we're not exactly sure what's going to happen.
Why did you guys make that decision exactly? Because being in the medical field, you could justify yourselves, couldn't you, as being essential and continue to even do LASIK surgeries?
Yeah, we could, but LASIK surgery and cataract surgery are considered non-essential surgeries, and they're considered to be and even though the chances of a patient having a surgery like that taking up a hospital bed is really remote, we just wanted to comply. And the American Academy of Ophthalmology, which board certifies us, has recommended that unless you have an urgent need to see a patient, that you only see patients on an urgent need.
So we got Dr. Reed from Griffin Reed Eye Care with us. On the doctor side of it, you mentioned these drug trials. There was a little bit of controversy over the last week and a half when President Trump started throwing out one of them,
It's Plaquenil.
Okay, that's the one that you do with the Z-Pak,
Yep.
Which was based off of some success in France, and now we are doing trials in America. What is your opinion as a doctor? Are you of the mindset throw everything against the wall and see if it sticks?
Okay, now I have to put on 2 different hats if you ask me that question. My classic training says that a double-blind randomized clinical trial is the only way to know for sure if something really works. But that's under normal circumstances. We are not in normal times and under normal circumstances. If a potential cure, a potential treatment has a relatively few number of side effects and potential morbidity, which is, the potential side effects can lead to problems. I think that not using that in people who are severely ill is actually unconscionable. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, I know others will disagree with me, but in my particular case, if I was hospitalized with COVID and I was becoming short of breath, I would want to be on hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin.
And they are doing the double-blind test at places like Johns Hopkins and Cleveland Clinic.
Right.
I've heard anecdotally that some doctors have prescribed. There's this gentleman in New York who came out and said, I got an infectious disease guy to give me this exact combination.
Correct.
And he felt better 12 hours later when he felt like he was going to die beforehand.
Correct.
What are the legalities of that?
Well, it was an issue because doctors use things and medications all the time in what's called an off-label fashion, which means what the drug and or the procedure as it was originally approved by the FDA has changed, and you found other uses for it. They don't go back and they retest the drug in its entirety all over again just to see if it fits these new criteria. They allow physicians who are trained and licensed to use the drug in what's called off-label, which means they can use it for the expanded use, and it's legal. There were a couple governors in the United States that decided to become medical doctors and decided to impose their will upon doctors and said they couldn't do that.
Nevada.
Questionably because of some, maybe because Trump actually touted it, then they just said that they weren't going to do that. And, there is some issue with that. There are some cardiovascular effects can occur with hydroxychloroquine if you have arrhythmias, but the chances of that are very low. So bottom line is the FDA came out, I think yesterday or the day before, said that it was now approved for off-label use. So now if a doctor uses it and some patient has a complication, they're not going to get sued.
Do you agree with everything we're hearing that even with FDA fast tracking, a vaccine is a year away? Is that about the right timeline?
That's it's a possibility. It could be sooner than that, but it may be not a traditional vaccine. Traditional vaccines, like for measles, mumps, and rubella, are dead virus cells or partially dead virus cells. For like diphtheria, it's a live virus. And your immune system mounts a response to that, and that's why then you're able to mount a response if you're challenged with it again. But this virus has some unique properties to it. It has an envelope, a membrane, and then a spike on it. And the spike actually is made of a certain type of messenger RNA. And maybe I'm getting too technical here, but if you can build a vaccine that will actually help the immune system recognize that spike, that messenger RNA, you may be able to sensitize the immune system to be able to attack the virus before it's able to replicate and be able to overwhelm your system.
This is making sense because also the photo they always show of what it looks like.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm picturing of those things, like being attacked with that.
One of the little spikes on there, Dawn, is actually the thing that it makes it more of a toxic issue with human cells, especially human lung cells, because that spike actually integrates and actually attaches to human lung cells, incorporates itself in the cell, and then it replicates in the cell and kills the cells. Then you get this overwhelming immune response in people, and then they get what's called ARDS, which is a lung condition that basically whites out their lungs, and that's even with a ventilator. Jeez. They get no relief.
We're going to play a sound clip next hour of Dr. Anthony Fauci, the disease specialist who's kind of leading the whole way here. He was asked yesterday about the coronavirus coming back with the same or greater force this fall, which for those that aren't paying attention is only 6 months away. And he basically said, I expect that. His word of optimism, though, was we might have these treatments, all the social distancing that we've learned, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. What's your take on what this is going to look like in October?
Well, traditionally, and what happened in the 1918 flu epidemic, there were 3 spikes. Actually, there was the initial spike, one about 6 months later, and one about a year later, if I recall. And the combination of all 3 killed tens of millions of people. So
that's where the modeling comes from for coronavirus of the worst case scenario of these 80% and millions dead. A lot of people didn't understand this is over the course of a year and a half.
That's correct. In fact, it was, I believe, 2 years. But bottom line is that people who are at risk, like me, are going to have to socially isolate and take care of themselves for a longer period of time till a different alternative is available, either an adequate treatment that's proven or a vaccine.
So that brings us back to what you were talking about people high risk. Because one of the things we started talking about prior to President Trump's announcement on Sunday, he was saying, I'd like to be open by Easter. And we were just talking, because that's all we have to do these days.
Sure.
Are we heading towards those at risk, elderly, immunocompromised? Are they the ones that need to quarantine? So where's the middle ground for you? Do you think canceling April, which is what we've done, is a good idea? And I mean, this is just you guessing as a doctor and an informed individual. How do we know when to start opening up? Because you're right, the economy's a mess. You know it. You're a business owner. Right. It's awful, and we keep projecting on this show just how bad it could be. They came out yesterday. They're thinking it could go as high as, was it 32% unemployment?
34 to 37.
My God, the Depression was 25%.
Right.
So
Jesus.
Where's that balance?
Well, that's the issue. You really have to balance it. You can't. If you kill the patient with the cure, you really haven't done any good, right? So I think we'll learn more as we go. We'll learn who needs to isolate, how they need to isolate, how long they need to isolate. But I think that to in the long run, ask people to continue to socially isolate over a long, long period of time, it's not going to work. I think that putting it off till the end of April is probably a good idea. I think until we get a handle on exactly how the transmission of this virus works in a population, we're getting a pretty good idea from how it works in New York, where they were unregulated for a while. I think California's done a great job. I'm not a big Newsom fan, but I think he has done a great job.
Same. I'm not a big fan of his either. And it almost was making me mad that I had to say something good about him. He's done a great job.
He's done a great job. And I know it was not easy, and it was tough to shut the state down.
But he showed such restraint before doing it, and yet was still ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I think it's going to save thousands of lives because of that. And I think thousands of people are going to be saved because of that.
What do you say or suggest to people who are going stir crazy? I mean, we are only 12 days into the statewide shutdown.
God.
We've got another 30 days at least. You know, nothing's changing in California. Newsom said it could be 12 weeks. But we know we've got another 5 weeks in California. Nevada's going to get extended that long as well after Trump's guidance. We come on the air every Monday and talk about what it's like to be locked in our homes for the weekend. We're fortunate. We get to come to our studio here, at least. Whereas some of us have spouses locked at home, just for as an example, trying to do law school from home and going stir crazy over.
Must be ugly.
Imagine the combination, right? Yeah. Law school and stir. What about?
No wonder you spend all your time here.
My office hours are getting longer by the day. But what about people that they're bored? They're starting to think horrible things. They're as you the self-isolation. The longer it goes on, how do we calm people?
You know. The people that I go to church with have figured out a way to reach out to other people without getting in social contact with them. We have this ministering program where people are asked to reach out to different people within the congregation and make sure they're okay, at least on a weekly basis. And that seems to be working very well because we don't attend church anymore. We don't go to public meetings. I heard a little bit of that discussion too, and I agree that you shouldn't do that. There was a choir in Seattle that decided to have choir practice, and now 4 of them have COVID and 2 of them are dead. So, you know, God expects people, I think, to use their head.
Absolutely,
right?
yes. That's why He gave us a brain.
That's why He gave us a brain. And this is not a plague caused by God, but He expects us to use our head to get ourselves out of this.
That's right.
And I believe He will. But I think we need to use our good common sense.
And not to get too Bible-y for other people. I mean, He also calls you to respect the laws of the land you live in.
Right.
You know, you follow the law of God, but you also then don't get to run roughshod over, where you live. You have to follow the law.
We'll give you an example. Now, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. We have a semi-annual general conference, which is this weekend. Typically, there's 22,000 people meet in the conference center in Salt Lake City. And they're not doing that. They're having a meeting in a building where the only people there will be the people that are speaking, and it'll be televised worldwide. But they realize the importance, the necessity of not congregating together and not potentially doing that. I mean, the choir's not going to, you're going to have the Mormon Tabernacle Choir anymore. I mean, because they realize that that's a risk. And, I think that's wisdom. I think that we need to be wise.
So mentioning what your church group is doing, the idea then, would you suggest of people, and we've heard stories about this, checking in with their neighbors, using FaceTime more, just communicating with people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you've always been honest about your faith. And Dawn was talking about hers earlier. At this point, are you scared? And where does your faith come into play over what's going on right now, other than what you've already said?
I think if it's my time to go and I get COVID and I die, I die. But
you're not actively trying to get it like some other people seem to be.
That's why I'm wearing a mask and gloves, Rob, because I think that if I walk around and showing faith also means that you have to show works, and I need to wear my mask and keep my gloves on and avoid going to places with large groups of people. And I think that, my concern a little bit is for people out there who are getting depressed, who are getting overwhelmed with anxiety and depression because of the social isolation. I know my son came back from the home show in Fresno, and we made him stay in a different part of the house for 5-6 days until I was sure that he wasn't contagious. And it was really hard for him because he's a social person. He likes to be around others. But I also said to him, because of a risk his mother and I have, he really can't go out and be with all his friends. And he respected that, and I appreciate that.
And you add in not only the self-isolation, obviously the fear over finances. Which, long before this, is the number one thing that, for the most part, sends people spiraling towards horrible depression. And now there's so many unknowns.
Well, I'm grateful that Congress finally got their act together and passed the relief bill.
Ridiculous.
Because I think the people that need that most, that $3,000, are gonna enjoy it, and it'll tide them through at least April. I don't know what's going to happen after that.
More stimulus. They're going to have, and we don't even allow it to be called stimulus on this show, because it's not stimulus. This is rescue.
Basically, we're printing money against an unforeseen circumstance that nobody could have predicted.
Almost everybody who wrote in knowing you were going to be here, we've covered all of the questions. A lot of them were concerned about you. And,
that's so sweet.
Oh, how sweet.
And wanting to know, and you've covered all of their the reassuring words and stuff. But you mentioned you and your wife, you got your son. So how are you, other than isolating, how are you getting provisions and taking care of yourself other than everything else you're doing?
Well, we have some good friends who are members of our church who actually we were in Hawaii with. They don't have risk factors. They're our age. They went, and she bought some groceries for us the other day so that we'd have some food. I went and braved the Costco line.
Oh
God.
With my mask and my gloves on.
Oh, wow. You really needed to get out, I guess. Right?
I really did. But it was amazing. I went to the Costco in Folsom, and there was probably 800 people in that parking lot.
Gosh, wow.
And thankfully, I got there about 25 minutes before 8, because they let old people go at 8 now.
Okay, so you were there for the
I went for the old people, and I
Did
thought
they have to card you?
Yeah.
That's a real question. Did they really?
What's that?
Do they really check your ID?
No, they didn't get. They
Okay.
didn't.
Oh.
That's good.
But I saw people looking at people in line who didn't look like they were 65. Going, what are you doing
Yeah.
here? Yeah, trying to sneak in on the rest of us.
You know, you should be punished, those of you with Botox. Back of the line.
Well, that's another thing. Botox is not going to be done as frequently, so we're going to see what people really look like now.
Yeah, with everything.
We made the comment, or I made the comment because I'm the jackass of the show. I tell you what, if life ever goes back to normal, the people that get raises right away are the makeup and lighting people on TV. Because now that everybody is from home, you really see the effect of in HD of what artists the makeup folks are, for men and women, to be clear.
Yes.
I mean, it's
My
we're
wife
seeing a
was
lot.
commenting on the fact that a lot of people's hair looks a lot different now than it used to.
Yeah, look, my grays. I got so many. Usually I color them. And my Nana, Nana Queenie that I loved, she had pitch black hair till the day she died. She died in her late 80s. I always thought when I was younger, we don't have gray hair in our family, because I didn't know then. But no, she was dyeing it till the day she died.
just didn't know
That's
that.
me, but not right now.
There's one recurring doctor on one of the news channels I watch who just 4 months ago was a bombshell blonde, and now it's dirty brown. One quick email before we let you go, Doc. This is from Whitney.
Oh, God.
Says Italy's been quarantined for weeks now, and it's still spreading like wildfire, it seems. How is that possible when they have been isolating for so long, and what does that mean for U.S. as far as quarantine time?
Well, they didn't isolate, and everybody got exposed, and they had mass gatherings at soccer events and everything else. So there was a mass exposure, and the problem is the testing is only now catching up with the number of people that have been exposed. And I think you're going to see, as the number of tests go up and the number of people that get tested and the number of positives that come back, you're going to see a shift in what we think the severity of this disease is. I think, obviously the higher the number on the bottom of the ratio goes, the number of tested, the less significant the number on the top, the number that are severely affected or that actually die from the disease. Now, that doesn't mean one life is not precious, but it means that the 5% that was predicted initially as a mortality rate is probably going to drop to less than 1. And I heard Fauci say the same thing the other day. And he's a good man. He is a well-respected epidemiologist, virologist, and he knows his stuff.
And he's been doing it forever.
And he has been doing it forever, and he's a guy you can trust. And so I think what's going to happen is you'll see those numbers change. And as we get this new test that's now you can see in 5 minutes whether or not you're positive,
Crazy.
it'll be a big difference. My friend's son, who's actually an FBI agent, flew back from New York 2 weeks ago, came down with a fever the day later. They went and got a COVID test. They couldn't do it. He went 2 places. They insisted that he get it before he was able to go back to work. They finally did the test, but then he couldn't get the results for 11 days. And so he got the results yesterday, and he was positive.
Oh, gosh.
So now they have to backtrack and see everybody who he was in contact with for the last 11 days.
And those stories are as awful as the ones, especially in the healthcare industry, who spend 10 or 11 days isolating. Turns out they're negative, and they could have been on the front lines.
They could have been on the front lines. So the rapid testing is going to make a huge difference. And you'll see people less likely to expose others because they'll either know they're positive and they'll self-quarantine, or they'll know they're negative and they can get out and do what they need to do.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Reed.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Really
Good to be
appreciate
here,
it,
Rob.
and appreciate your kind words. Now go home and don't talk to anybody or touch anybody.
Well,
better.
I've actually got to run by the office and
All right.
see somebody. But
Okay. All right.
Do you have to?
You have to.
yeah, kind of do.
Thank you for being here. We're so generous. We're giving away money during this time.
Wow.
So, I know. We're gonna play the pressure cooker. You got to get 5 right in 30 seconds.
Is this stimulus money?
It's rad stimulus. We're calling it our pandemic bailout. I'm gonna talk to the SBA about helping me out a little bit with this.
I think you can get a loan. I saw that in the paper.
We need the paper.
The paper.
Of course, you read the paper. Caller 18 right
I
now
love it.
plays the pressure cooker at 888-989-9811.